My name is Molly Merritt. I am a core organizer with the Western Mass chapter of WMSURJ, Showing Up for Racial Justice. WMSURJ is a national organization that works to mobilize white people to be part of a multiracial movement for racial justice. The Western Mass chapter of WMSURJ has been engaged in indigenous reparations work, and we are here to share some more information about this work with the Hassanamisco Band of the Nipmuc People.
I'm Jane Stevenson. Reparations are an acknowledgement of 400 years of racial injustice and white supremacist violence in the United States. Reparations are part of the repayment of the debt owed to Black and Indigenous people for the taking of lives, land, culture, health, freedom, and resources. Anyone who benefits from white privilege and racialized capitalism can pay reparations. White individuals, families, the US government, local on up to the White House, and institutions like banks and universities, churches, corporations. Reparations are crucial for racial and economic justice.
We look to the movement for Black lives as one of the national leaders in the demand for reparations. And we acknowledge that their deep and extensive platform conceives of reparations as much more than just monetary compensation. While we continue to advocate for full reparations on institutional levels, we also believe that people with white privilege can begin the process of repair and healing by paying personal reparations.
We also want to recognize and honor the Black-led grassroots reparations campaign that reminds us that the midpoint between truth and reconciliation is reparations. Western Mass WMSURJ has been engaged in making personal reparations payments and encouraging others to do so as a regular practice since 2017. In 2019 and 20, our chapter launched a reparations campaign goal specifically linked to housing justice. You can learn more about this work on our website.
After our housing justice campaign, Western Mass WMSURJ decided to turn towards indigenous reparations in order to acknowledge our role as settlers in this land. Settler is a term used to describe people whose ancestors migrated to a new area or who were born into an already established settler colony. As settlers, Western Mass WMSURJ members recognize that a brutal process of genocide is an undeniable part of our existence here in so-called New England. We understand that colonialism, racism, and capitalism intertwine in a harmful, vicious cycle, which poses an existential threat to life on Earth. We're implicated in that harm unless we work to undo it. Paying Indigenous reparations is one small step towards repair, and we continue to look to Indigenous communities for other ways to show up and follow their leadership.
We're inviting settlers to acknowledge that we occupy stolen Indigenous land and take a step towards repair with Indigenous communities. For many of us in Western and Central Massachusetts, we occupy the ancestral homelands of the Nipmuc people, who currently have sovereignty over just 4 acres of land, the Hassanamisco Reservation in Grafton, Massachusetts. Through paying Indigenous reparations, Western Mass WMSURJ seeks to acknowledge past harms and lift up and support the vital work of the Nipmuc Indian Development Corporation, NIDC. Since the beginning of 2021, 100% of the reparation money we've collected has gone to the NIDC. It's the 501c3 used by the Hassanamisco Nipmuc Band to further their goals, including improved spiritual and physical health, increased economic stability, and the development of communal responsibility to land, water, and people. Now we're going to play a slideshow presentation of the Hassanamisco Nipmuc Band sachem, Cheryll Toney Holley, talking about the Nipmuc people, past and present.
Kinupiam, that's a sour Cheryll Toney Holley, Yinako Sunsqua, Hassanamisco. Welcome. My name is Cheryll Toney Holley. I am the Sunsqua of the Hassanamisco Nipmuc Band. The following presentation tells a little of our story. This map depicts a very rough estimate of pre-contact borders in southern New England. Pre-contact means before Europeans settled on these shores. Nipmuc means freshwater people. The name Nipmuc referred to all Indians living inland in what is now Massachusetts and parts of Rhode Island and Connecticut. And those bands of people consisted of several related people with kinship ties and common planting, hunting, and fishing grounds. So who are the Nipmucs? Again, Nipmuc means freshwater people. Nini Missy Nuak means the people, which is what we called ourselves before the English came. We spoke an Eastern Algonquin language, sort of a combination of N and L dialect. We are still speaking that language this day. We lived in multiple planned villages throughout our homeland area. We had seasonal cycles of economic and living activity, such as certain places where we go to plant in the spring. We'd go back to those places in the fall to harvest. There were fishing grounds, there were hunting grounds, and there were winter camps. This is a map of praying villages. Most of you will know that Reverend John Eliot of Roxbury was a missionary preaching to the natives in the 1640s to 1680s. Between 1650 and 1675, a total of 14 praying villages were established in the general Nipmuc, Massachusetts, and Pennacook area. These are some of the towns here on the map. Neshoba is where Littleton is now. Wayuntung is where Uxbridge is now. Shockalog is Douglas. Wamisit is Lowell. Nashaway is where Lancaster is. Accomamecketsit is Marlborough. Magungaquag is Ashland. Manchog, Sutton. And all the rest. Wabaquisset is down here in Woodstock. Chibunuk is where Webster and Dudley is. Like the slide says, we only have 3.5 acres left of all the land once cared for by our people. We don't call it ownership, we call it stewarding. It's a little bit different from ownership. Our ancestors believed that the land was our relative, a relative that cared for us as we cared for it. This sign was erected in 1930 by the state, along with, I think, 100 other signs depicting their 300th anniversary. The current reservation evolved for land allotted to the Moses Printer family in 1728, when 7,500 of the 8,000 acres of Hassanamisco were sold to 40 English proprietors, forming the town of Grafton. The remaining 500 acres were divided between 7 remaining Nipmuc families. The top picture of that stream is a stream as it runs through Hassanamisco right now. And that bottom right photo is a Blackstone River as it throws through what we call the 57 acres. Nipmucs today are state recognized in both Massachusetts and Rhode Island. We are governed by a traditional government consisting of the Sunsquaw and Tribal Council. Reservation based, with our reservation of course in Grafton, we enjoy annual powwows, and there are about 2,500 Nipmucs total throughout the various bands. Executive state recognition was given to the Hassanamisco tribe in 1974 under Governor Dukakis. In 1995, the Hassanamisco Band joined the Nipmuc Nation along with other Nipmuc bands and groups for the purpose of federal recognition. In February of 2022, Hassanamisco left the Nipmuc Nation to go back on their own. We are a matriarchal society. History demonstrates that our people were once matriarchal. Even the Puritans recognized this and acknowledged this by allowing land to pass from mother to daughter. We are slowly returning to a matriarchal community today. Our women birth and care for and raise the next generation. They are working hard to ensure that our culture does not die, and we're committed to raising strong, dedicated, caring leaders. It's just some pictures of some of our women. In the top left corner, it's Erica Campbell and her grandmother, Nellie Toney, who's the head of our Elders Committee. The big, large picture here on the right is Zara Cisco Brow, who was the sachem for many years at Hassanamisco, one of the descendants of the printers. And the other corners is a group of Nipmuc women.
Squaw Nipmuc means Nipmuc women. We have a lot of women doing a lot of things in Hassanamisco right now. We have a female leader, the Squaw, which is me. Our eldest council is male and female, but mostly female. And then we have the Squaw Nipmuc Society, the Nipmuc Women's Medicine Society. Its strict translation of Squaw Nipmuc is Nipmuc Women, Be Thou Wise. And here's a picture of some of our members. The first photo is after a hand drum making class. Drumming is an important way of communicating with our ancestors and others. And this second photo on the right was taken while gathering sweetgrass in Maine as guests of the Passamaquoddy. The Hassanamisco Band is community-based, consensus-driven. We believe that traditions change and evolve over time. It's really disheartening sometimes when people expect us to still live in teepees. Of course, we never had teepees here. We had wigwams or weetus. But traditions change and evolve, just like it does for every single community on Earth. Our focus is strengthening the ties that bind our community. One of the ways we do this is with the Hassanamisco Indian Museum. So the history of this museum is in 1801. There were 3 rooms with a chimney built over an original weetu spot. The story is that the woman's sons were more modernized than she, and they lived in frame houses, and they wanted their mother to as well. So they sold the land to the north of the weetu in exchange for an Englishman to build their mother a house. That house is now on the National Register of Historic Places. So the museum itself started in 1962 and was housed within the Cisco homestead. The middle picture is how it looked in, say, from 1976 maybe until the year 2000. It's the only structure to be continuously occupied by natives in southern New England. And the last picture to the right shows it undergoing restoration at this time. We're trying to send it back to its 1820s luster. Also on the reservation, we have an annual powwow. The powwow in July serves many purposes, including being a fundraiser for the reservation, a homecoming for tribal members, and a sharing of our culture with our non-Nipmuc friends and neighbors. It's just some more powwow photos. It's a lot of work, but it's a really good time. So part of strengthening our community is a revitalization of our ancestral language. We have actively studied and taught the language since the 1970s. We currently offer in-person and online classes for Nipmucs of all ages. The language materials are in workbook form and can be downloaded from our language website at www.nipmuclanguage.org. So the picture on the right is a photo of the opening page of the, they call it the Elliott Bible, but it's a Bible translated into N dialect Algonquin. And the photo on the left is the cover of our volume 1 of our language workbook. Paddles. So paddling is how our ancestors traveled. We are freshwater people, and for centuries we're linked to each other via waterways. We use paddling today to honor and remember our ancestors. Every year, except during COVID, we have our annual paddle to Deer Island to remember the Nipmuc peoples who were forcibly removed from their homes to Deer Island in Boston Harbor. Most perished without food, fresh water, and shelter. We also organize paddles throughout the year to keep the tradition of paddling alive, promote healthy exercise, and simply just to be with each other. It's a great time. Most of our Nipmucs are Christian. Some follow the old ways as best as they can, though, piecing together practices that our ancestors did. So a mixture of Christian and old ways. The old ways are mostly earth-based, multi-deity. We have ceremony on the res quite often. We have women's ceremonies. We have ceremonies when we rebury people. We have ceremonies just because. We have quarterly moon observances like Strawberry Moon or Harvest Moon. The reservation is the last bit of land occupied only by Native people in Massachusetts. We use the pathways to the rear to some of our more sacred sites and graveyards in the back of the reservation. We reinter our ancestors on the reservation whenever they are returned to us. The Cisco Archive is a collection of historical papers belonging to the Cisco family, who are the descendants of the original printers. That was a picture of Chief Vickers. Self-sufficiency and reclamation. This is very important to us if we want to survive into the next century. And we do. We want our people to survive. We want our culture to continue, however different it may be from the culture that was here when the Europeans first landed. So to accomplish that, we have a whole set of things here. We have the NIDC, which is the Nipmuc Indian Development Corporation. We have youth group. We support our artists. We have food sovereignty programs, and we have land reclamation programs. This picture right here is just a capture of one of our school programs that we use. So the NIDC is the Nipmuc Indian Development Corporation. It's a Tribal 1 501c3. It is a nonprofit arm of the tribe. Funds raised by the NIDC are used to pay for repairs to the reservation and its buildings, including the current conversion of the cook shack into a commercial kitchen, youth and adult programming, and any other need that we may have. You see it in the logo here, the corn, the turtle, and a wheat tube. Our art. We always and continue to support our Nipmuc artists. We encourage contemporary arts and artists, and we support the reclamation of ancient art forms. And this picture is a Nipmuc basket that was probably created back in the 1840s using traditional Nipmuc stamp work. So Nipmuc baskets are very similar to Mohegan baskets, but this one is a Nipmuc one. Very few exist nowadays. This is some modern Nipmuc work. It's a ring. This is a headdress. And some more Nipmuc traditional. It's a mix of traditional and contemporary work in this photos. Nipiash Wampe Moash. This is our youth group. And our youth group is used to prepare our children for adulthood through a traditional approach. They are guided by culture, family, and the values and traditions of their Nipmuc relations. Nipmuc youth are introduced to histories, traditional arts, agricultural practices, Nipmuc values, and tribal government processes. It's a multi-year mentoring process with elders, leaders, and knowledge keepers of the community. In this photo here, you see 3 of our youth preparing elderberry syrup for the community. Food sovereignty. So several years ago, one of our youth developed type 1 diabetes. He was 19, and it was frightening for a community that had long lived with type 2 diabetes and older members. We started looking at what we ate, how to make changes, how to grow our own food. We partnered with UMass Medical School to do some research, but those grants never came through, so we started doing some things on our own. So one of the things we did was establish a community garden where we grew food and distributed it to members. Another thing was a food assessment. Our youth surveyed families to document what Nipmucs ate, what food-related diseases we had, and what we could do in the future to make things better. We also started several home gardens where we'd share seeds and plants and soil and even raised beds with families so they could grow their food at home. We also established a no soda policy at the reservation. And as I said earlier, we're in the process of renovating our cook shack into a commercial kitchen so that people can come and can foods or freeze foods or make preparations, medicine or otherwise, right there in the commercial kitchen. Reclaiming our medicine. We currently have 2 Nipmuc apothecaries, one in Worcester and one in Athol. Tribal members and others can access herbal remedies at no cost from either location. And part of this is we had to rebuild our pharmacopoeia. We had to go back in and relearn these plants and the herbal medicine and grow herbs on the reservation. Right next to where we grow our vegetables, we have an herb garden. land issues. So we are actively engaged in rematriating indigenous lands taken from us. Our goal is to restore our people's relationship to the land by stewarding our current and future lands in a manner that honors our ancestors and equips our future generations with sustainable ways to thrive. These lands are used reciprocally for ceremony, farming, human habitat, environmental restoration, and to preserve our culture. One example is the 181-acre farm that is in process of being rematriated to our people. Our hope is that this land will provide food and shelter for generations of Nipmuc people. You can see it right here at the corner here. It's called Maggie's Farm. So what it means to be Nipmuc, separate yet the same, honoring and respecting our traditions and ancestors, remembering who we are, teaching our children the old ways, and then at the same time learning new ways to secure our future. So we are part of the general society, yet separate by choice and by necessity, meaning that as a non-white people, we are not always welcome. Teaching our children the old ways and helping them and us incorporate those ways into our daily lives is essential for our survival and for us to thrive. Any questions, please email me at crwritings@aol.com or info@nipi.org. Thank you.
Thanks for watching that presentation. Just a couple of notes about the presentation. So that was shared with us by Cheryll from the Hassanamisco Nipmuc Band to help people learn about the Nipmuc people. It's not something that we learn about, in our school education, that there are indigenous people living in Massachusetts who are indigenous to Massachusetts. So that slideshow was provided to us to kind of educate our community. One other quick note about our indigenous reparations work. A number of people have asked us why we, our SURJ chapter, is collecting reparations rather than having the payments sent directly to the tribe. At this time, the tribe does not have a mechanism to accept online payments. And we were asked by the leadership to collect the money and pass it along to them on a quarterly basis, which is what we're currently doing.
You can see our website for more information on how to pay reparations through our campaign or how to send a check directly to the NIDC if you prefer. On our website, you could also sign up for our email listserv if you're not already on it. We thank you for engaging with this work, and we look forward to any questions or connections you'd like to make. Thanks.